Welcome to Natural Born Talents. Today's subject, the importance of culture and history. In this video, I'd like to share some of the secrets of Okinawa. Last week I had intended to go do some ghost hunting, but instead got quite a pleasant surprise. Instead of running into either aliens or ghosts or demons, I ran into some ancestors, some Aquarian ancestors hidden within another culture. The whole trip turned out to be something very akin to what the transition's all about. So for this video, I'm going to explain what I explored and how that is related to the transition. Okinawa is a fascinating place. It is mixed of all kinds of culture, from China, Japan, America, Korea, as well as its own culture, the Ryukokoku Kingdom, the original name of Okinawa before it was annexed by Japan. Now, Okinawa is nothing like Japan in many ways, nothing like China, Korea, or America. It really has its own unique culture, but is also very good at mixing other cultures within its own. And in this video, I'm going to explain that very culture and how it's related to the Aquarians. Okinawa is a very harsh island. It's very difficult to live there. It's very hot. However, it is full of some of the most amazing spirits you could possibly come across, if you know where to look. It also has some of the darkest and most horrifying history one could imagine. But in this video, I'm going to focus on the positive side. After arriving in Okinawa, the first place that I went to is the place called Seifu Utake. Seifu Utake is one of the most sacred places in Okinawa because it is the prayer spot for the Yuta-san. And the Yuta-san are like the Miko-san or the Celtic witches. They are all female channelers. Their practices are very similar to my Celtic ancestors. They can talk to the dead. They are all women. And they use water during their initiation of new members, which of course is a very Aquarian symbol. This stone you see here is where they gather to see the sun rise in the east. Also very similar to something you might find in Celtic practices or culture. It overlooks the birthplace of the gods of Okinawa, Kutakajima, well known for its many cats located on the island. When I went there, I could channel with one of the ancestors almost immediately. She was a very kind, very loving being, as all Aquarians are. Immediately pulled off some of the negative energy within my psyche and soul. And she pointed out some of the things that they practiced in Okinawa hundreds, if not thousands of years ago. And in this video here, you can see where they collected water to put on the forehead of their new initiates. Channeling was one of their main powers. And here in this castle, they would gather to pray and give information to the king at that time. This was also true of the Druids and the witches of the Celtic culture as well. Channelers of the dead would often be collected and kept near the king of that time. So I went to Kutakajima the following day and lo and behold came across what is known as a Kijimuna, one of the very playful fairies of Okinawa. The Kijimuna has a fascinating history within Okinawa, and many people have seen them or heard them. They live in these trees. These trees are amazing. They entangle and twist and turn throughout all of the jungle part of Okinawa. And if you're sensitive enough, you can pick them up. They can play tricks on you, but they tend to keep to themselves as they are rather playful, happy-go-lucky beings. They don't interfere with humanity, but are occasionally curious about humans and their behavior. Like other fairies in the Celtic mythology, the city folk, or the Shi, as they're sometimes called, the gentry, They sometimes interact with humans, but only on rare occasions. So on the first, second, and third day, I basically did a lot of walking on the areas a Yuta-san would probably travel. The prayer spots, a castle, the rock you see here, Seifu Take, and Kudakajima, where the Yuta-san or nuns would gather to do all kinds of prayers or initiations or whatever. The exact details of those practices seem to be somewhat of a mystery. However, on the fourth day, the ancestors of the Yuta-san came up with my ancestors, and we started picking up people within Okinawa that we might be able to do some help with. And this turned out to be a lot of fun. The first group of people I ran into was at the place that I was staying. There was a family with 2 children who were in need. They had just moved from mainland Japan to Okinawa, and they didn't have a whole lot of money, and they were in transition to getting a job, a new apartment, and all of the headaches that go with that. And they had these 2 kids who would just not talk to anyone except their parents. And of course my ancestors immediately said these kids need some help, and so does the mother. So I went to the mother and I told her what I could do, and she said, yes, please help. So what I did, every day that I stayed at that place, I played with the kids and taught them English. And we ended up laughing our heads off. It got to be such a lot of fun that some of the neighbors' kids started to join in. The parents were really appreciative. They had to focus on getting jobs, getting apartments, getting schools lined up, and all that crap. And they needed the extra help with the kids in order so that their kids had a decent spring vacation. This was obviously set up by my ancestors and this family's ancestors. But it turned out to be such a joy that I'm sure that I'll see them again. Another person staying at the place was in the same kind of work that I am in, working with children. He specializes in troubled children, children whose parents are divorced or have abusive parents or have no parents at all. So he and I exchanged a lot of information on techniques and stuff on how to help children get past hard times. But he also took me to his hometown, which is in the north of Okinawa, which is very few people live there. It's a beautiful place, and I got to channel with his ancestors. And his ancestors, we went to visit his grave, you see here, his ancestors' graves. And he was very embarrassed that he didn't keep it cleaned or tidy. And the ancestors quickly told me to tell him not to worry. The graves are being returned to the mountain, and they don't care. You shouldn't feel guilty over something so silly as that. It was fascinating. I told him as much as I could, and he was very appreciative of it. Probably we'll be seeing him again soon. On the following day, I had another fascinating experience. I went for a walk by the beach and saw 2 young ladies who were lovers, and they were having a lot of trouble. And the ancestors immediately came in and asked me if I could help them. Now, I didn't approach them directly because I didn't want to disturb their privacy or life pattern. So the ancestors and I got our heads together and we figured out some patterns, some romantic patterns, some patterns that would include getting over the issues that they are dealing with, the reason that they're in the matrix in the first place, but also to have moments of joy, love, romance, better sexual experiences, and so on. This is not easy to achieve in the environment of Okinawa at this time. It wasn't so hard back in the days of the Yuta-san. So they asked me to bring some of that energy in from the past. From what I understand, they were very appreciative of it. I got a lot of feedback from that, and apparently we're going to be doing some more work in that area in the future. Other places I went to were less related to the spiritual stuff and more related to pop Japanese culture and pop Okinawan culture, as well as some historical information that I gathered. Most of this will be in part 2 of this 2-part series. It will also contain more about karate, staff fighting, some of the other spiritual creatures that you can encounter in Okinawa, some of the things related to Okinawa diet, the 3-day Essa dance to summon and send off ancestors, and so on. In the latter part of this video, there is some music that is very well known in Okinawa, Ten Sagunu Hana. The flute instrument is very similar to some of the flute instrument you would hear in Celtic music as well. It's very relaxing, but if you don't want to listen to it, you can end the video here. And thank you for watching. Hope to see you in the next video.
ずや夢